All right, greetings everyone. My name is Nida Atshan. We're live here in Silicon Valley, and we have with us Omar Hassan. Jonathan and Tom are also guests with us live from London, I believe. We're very, very excited to have you with us today. Omar Hassan, he's the founder and CEO of Inevert.com, which is a global platform connecting startups and corporates globally. And Tom and Jonathan are with us from Cisco. Tom is the global MD, and Jonathan is the European lead. Omar, I believe, will give us an introduction of both these gentlemen in a little bit. Today's webinar is going to be discussing corporates and startups and how they can work together. So this is going to be a great webinar for any startups that want to learn more about how to connect with and approach startups, and also the other way around. So thank you so much, Omar, for being with us. We are going to be taking questions live through our Twitter. You can use the hashtag TW Webinar Series if you'd like to send us live questions throughout the webinar. We'll also leave the last 10 minutes for Q&A for anyone who hasn't gotten their questions in. So welcome to all of our viewers across the globe, and thank you so much to our speakers for being here.
Nidat, thank you very much, and thanks to TechWadi for hosting us today. It is actually a truly global webinar. We've got myself in London, and we have Tom Yoritaka, who is the global MD for Cisco EIR program, and Jonathan Castello, the European lead and head of the program, joining us from Paris today. So we've really made it global. And I think we've got I think Tom and Jonathan have lost their connection. But while we get them back online, the conversation today was, there we go, we've got Jonathan and Tom back online. The conversation today with both Tom and Jonathan, it's around corporate innovation and how successful corporates and startups can engage. The reason we've asked Tom and Jonathan to join us, because the Cisco program is probably, as far as from my experience going around and meeting a lot of corporates and startups, the Cisco program is one of the very best programs. I think the guys have really nailed what corporate startup engagement should look like. And today we want to sort of find out from Jonathan and Tom a bit about why Cisco took this route, I think 4 years ago, when certainly 4 years ago, if you said to a lot of startups, you should go speak to corporate, a lot of people say, no, don't go speak to them. They'll kill your idea, it'll never work. But Tom obviously, saw the advantages early on and launched a successful program. So Jonathan and Tom, thank you very much for joining us and taking time out from your trip in Paris. Maybe we can start by giving our listeners a background on who you guys are, what you've been up to, and how Cisco came around with the EIR program.
Okay, so I'll just, this is Tom. Omar, thanks for the introduction. We're excited to be on this call. And I hope this will become the beginning of a conversation that ensues. So I want to encourage everyone on the call to obviously interact during the call today, but also follow up after the call. Find us on LinkedIn, connect with us, and let's keep the conversation going. So I'll just start briefly. This is Tom, and then I'll hand this over to Jonathan. The program is called Cisco Entrepreneurs in Residence, Cisco EIR. And in a nutshell, it's corporate venturing. And the genesis goes back to 4 years ago when some of us within Cisco realized that the two things. One, we were in the middle of a number of market transitions. IoT was becoming an important emerging technology market opportunity for us. We were seeing the early signs of AI, deep learning, and machine learning becoming important. We were seeing disruptions in the security space, et cetera. Blockchain is another example. So 4 years ago, we saw these market transitions happening around us. And secondly, we felt a lot of the most exciting innovations were happening in early stage companies. And at the time, Cisco really didn't have presence in that in the early part of the ecosystem. We were much better known making big acquisitions or later stage investments. So we said, well, let's change that. Let's make sure we keep up with the market transitions. And two, let's do so with the help of and in partnership with early stage companies. So Cisco, corporate venturing program was born. We started this in California in the Bay Area, and with a goal towards identifying, onboarding, and engaging early stage companies, typically between seed and Series B, that were building the most disruptive and important technologies in Cisco's strategic areas. I mentioned a few 30 seconds ago: IoT, AI, security, enterprise mobility, blockchain, cloud, and collaboration technology. And let's engage these companies in close partnership with Cisco's business units. These are Cisco businesses. Thanks. Oh, you guys hear me okay? I'm going to try to get closer to the microphone. We do this early stage companies in close partnership with Cisco business units. These are business units owning product and engineering. And go ahead.
Sorry, Tom, some of our viewers are having trouble hearing you. We just got someone who sent us a message saying they can't really hear the conversation. Okay. So
I'll get closer to the microphone. Is this better?
Yes, much better.
Okay, all right, sorry about that. So we do this in close partnership with Cisco business units, and our approach is it's a two-stage approach. The first step is it's all about engagement. It's all about relationship building, business outcomes, technology integration, and customer wins together with these early stage companies. We don't ask for equity stakes. We don't really focus on financial transactions. We focus on strategic relationships. Step two, based on the traction and the strategic nature of the relationship, in step two, we selectively consider, at least look at the possibility of acquiring the company or investing in the company. So it's a two-step approach. But first and foremost, this is not about buying someone or investing in someone. It's about building a long-term strategic relationship with each of the companies. Now, I'll just give you a few stats and I'll hand this over to Jonathan. Since 4 years ago, we brought in, through my group, 33 early stage companies between Silicon Valley and London, spread across these strategic areas that I just talked about. 7 have exited, 2 through Cisco. So we acquired 2 of the companies. 5 exited through our industry peers. 1 went to SAP, another went to Intel, and the rest went to small acquirers. Collectively, these companies have raised close to $100 million in investment capital from VCs and strategics. So a huge amount of success just from a purely financial perspective. More importantly, these companies collectively have created over 60 strategic engagements with Cisco business units and Cisco customers. And they've helped us build a pipeline of over $150 million in joint sales. So both on the financial side and on the commercial technology and strategic relationship side, we've seen a tremendous amount of success. We recently, so this year on May 5th, we officially launched a London presence. We're excited about covering both regions, California or North America and Europe. And we hope to keep growing our presence in both regions. And Jonathan has been spearheading our effort in Europe. And so I'll hand this over to Jonathan, and then we can go into details of our project and some of our aspects of the program.
Thank you, Tom. And what I'll do is I'll say it's probably time for Tom to wrap up, as he needs to start heading back to the airport. So I'll leave from here, but thank you, Tom. So as I was introduced before, my name is Jonathan Kostler. I maintain responsibility for our efforts in EMEA. What I'd like to do now is open up for some questions, some dialogue. Omar, if you have any kind of areas that you think are more relevant or prudent to our audience, I understand The audience is probably the majority, from all over the world, but available to answer any kind of question you may have or go into any detail.
Can you hear me now, Jonathan? Thanks for joining. I know Tom's had to dash back right now. So the audience we have, Jonathan, is majority startups. One of the things that I have always liked about the Cisco program, and certainly by you and Tom, is your approach to engaging with startups. So one of the challenges from a startup point of view is never knowing where to start. So you have this sort of big brand, you have Cisco, wherever it may be. I'm a startup, I have a great idea, and I want to go to that brand. I want to work with that brand. What is the best approach, and what have you seen? Because you've tried many ways, as part of the last 4 years, and you've seen a lot of good things, a lot of bad approaches. What has really stood out for you, and how should a startup think of breaking down this big monster of an organization?
Awesome question. And I'll use some of the terminology you used in your question. And the startup has decided they want to work with us. That's very telling. Sometimes we see companies and we see startups that want to create a business. And what we're slightly different is we look at companies anywhere from, let's say, a seed through to a kind of a B, that focus in on Cisco. So if you're going to speak with a corporate, so let's kind of neglect the word Cisco for a moment. If you're going to look at do business with a corporate, it's very important that you do your homework. It's very important that you speak value, and you speak value overtly. Where is it you want to coalesce with us, and what's the logic of that coalesce? So what's the logic of you having a relationship with us from an architectural perspective and from a value outcome perspective? Believe it or not, we spent a lot of time recently with partners of ours. We were in Zagreb recently with a group of friends of ours, and that was one of the areas we really focused in on. You really need to tell us from the get-go what's in it for us. Now, I don't mean what's in it for us from a monetary perspective, but how is it that we communicate your value to our customers? Our program is ultimately, if you distill it, it's innovation, less disruption. We want to help our clients innovate as quickly as possible with as little hassle as possible. So much like the way we would need to communicate the value of that to our customers, any startup wanting to participate or work or have a relationship with a corporate needs to speak the same vernacular or have the same ideas. So value.
For startups wanting to understand, sort of to figure out the value, I think if you take it back a step, I guess they've got to understand what your engagement with startups like. In the region, in the MENA region, I think there was a report recently about a year ago looking at corporate startup collaboration, and a lot of what it said was do CSR. I mean, which I think is fine to a certain degree, but how does a startup start to understand what is your goal out of this? So, is it co-innovation? Are they looking to solve a business problem, expand into future? How can they best understand how to leverage a corporate?
Cool. Another great question. So, as you said, some corporates are in the CSR space on it. It's a marketing exercise. Do your due diligence on that program, because some programs, and that's why we always lead with numbers. We lead with the financial outcomes and the amount of strategic engagements we have. If somebody who runs a corporate program can't give you numbers, you should have some questions of your own. You know what I mean? If the outcomes that they describe and discuss aren't relevant to you or aren't desirable outcomes, don't participate. So if it's a case, and I'll use my own program as an example, that you have technology that sits within the domains we mentioned, IoE, AI, security, collaboration, or blockchain, network security, a suite of those, and you have a product and you're selling it, but you think you could sell it better, you think you could sell it faster, you think you could sell more of it, and there's an iteration inside your product that would make it a core capability for Cisco, then you join my program. Because that's what we do. If you want for us to spend 90% of our time tweaking your product to help you bring it to market, you're talking to the wrong people. So understand what's unique, what the USP is of that given program, but also totally understand where you fit in. Because if you can tell me a compelling story about if we have a relationship, your life's going to be better, my life's going to be better, and the life of my customers thereafter is going to be much better. It's a simple conversation. It's telling a story, and it has to be believable, and all has to hang together. And if you can get that, it works. Go ahead, Omar.
You know, one of the things, and it's great, and I agree with you, is about building that story and demonstrating that value. But one of the challenges, and I've had this from a personal experience, 1 minute you're working in a big, you might be a consultant in one of the big four, or you might be in a government policy role. Then you decide, you know what, I'm going to start a startup. All of a sudden, you've lost this big organization from behind you. Then you go speak to somebody like yourself and say, look, I've got a great idea and I've got a great solution, but it's just me. I am a startup now. So how do you build that trust with somebody like yourself to say, you know what, trust me, I can deliver. I might not be part of a big organization. I'm just one man or one lady. Now, so I think trust is a big thing when startups go to corporates. So how do they go about building that trust? And do they wait until they've got some traction and delivery, or how does it work with Cisco? How do you guys approach that?
I won't answer for Cisco. I'll answer for Cisco entrepreneurs and residents. For us, it's the weight. I'll pick up on the weight part of what you had mentioned. So proving to us that you have traction. If you can come to me and say, hey, Jonathan, we're in the AI space and we have 7 customers. That's an awful lot different to saying to me, Jonathan, I'm a startup in the AI space, and do you have engineering resources for me? Yeah, because there's no way for me to feasibly consider how I monetize and or enhance if you haven't built anything. So the validation for us is market traction. It doesn't have to be huge. We're not asking you to come to us with a $50 million pipeline. 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 solid referenceable customers. That's where we start getting excited.
Okay, so get a bit of traction first. Get a bit of go with something substantial. Say, look, I've worked with these guys. I've delivered. This is my value that I bring to you, and that's great. Just tell the guys. I mean, the Cisco Entrepreneur in Residence program has been recognized as the best in Europe, and I think one of the biggest things that you guys do is having almost, if you speak to anybody in London or a lot of people in this circle, and you say Cisco EIR program, they automatically say Jonathan and Tom. So what you guys have done is created this almost single access point. So for startups, it's very easy to know who can help you within the Cisco EIR. That haven't done that, or for what's the best tip for a startup? And when they engage you, I think Tom was breaking up. How do you take them through the journey internally? And you do a lot of you have a business unit champion. How do they engage with that champion, and how do startups start to engage with Cisco through your program?
It's a great question, Omar. It's 15-hour days by me. That's how it works. Yeah.
I'm doing 18 hours at the moment.
Yeah. So that's exactly how it works. So again, it's relationships like this. So I'm going to be very candid. We're in Paris at the moment, and we're in Paris for 3 or 4 days, and we've made 4 or 5 meetings made. And we ultimately get our deal flow via friends, and I was delighted to hear you say that, Omar. Call us out by name. Myself and Tom spend a huge amount of time working with and collaborating with different ecosystem players and contributors. That give back mechanism and that participation allows us the opportunity, like today, a platform to communicate with people who are in similar business to us. Omar, you call me next week and say, hey, Jonathan, saw this super cool AI company. They've 11 customers and they're in the transport position, or in the transport business. That's how we find our deals. Notably, we can go and we can pay people for it, but we choose not to because it's not as good as the ecosystem and maintaining and cultivating that. Once that's happened, you have a direct line with myself and Tom. Yeah, well, once we've had friends pass these deals, ultimately the majority of the one-on-one due diligence is done. And from there, at your own convenience and at our convenience, we'll ask for 2 or 3 hours over the course of a couple of days. We'll understand your technology in a basic way. We'll understand the go-to-market in a basic way. We'll understand how defensible it is. And then what we'll do is we'll turn around and we'll say, okay, I understand this, the story, and this is what I was saying to you earlier on, Omar, the story hangs together. The story makes sense. I believe that there's an obvious reason why we should continue the conversation. And then that's when we really button down the architecture and the technology due diligence. We do that informally via our executive teams. and some of our distinguished engineers. And once that's done, we stand back and say, okay, are we going to have are we going to talk about you joining one of our cohorts? And again, as Tom said, there's no equity involved. We only want to work with people who want to work with us. Cool. When we find that, we end up with these kind of cool, easygoing relationships, and everybody's having fun. We're building, we're moving forward, we're progressing.
So, no, I mean, and I like the fact. So, what you're saying is basically, you source everything through your friends and ecosystem, which I think is a great approach. I mean, I met Tom about 2 years ago, and he's certainly been around the ecosystem and one of the ecosystem in London now. I'm going to ask you something, because we've got a question, but before we get to that, in the MENA region, so we're talking Middle East, North Africa, and from your experience, I think this is quite interesting. Culturally, trust is one of the first things. Trust can be an issue sometimes, right? So, when you go to the valley and you have an idea, you share it with 100 people. You share ideas, you bounce around. To a certain degree, in the UK, we share a lot. When it comes to corporate startup engagement, a lot of startups think, oh, but it's my IP, it's my idea, they might steal it. So how do you take that approach towards IP? And is it such a major thing? And it's somewhere like the Middle East where it might stop people speaking to a corporate over. How do you what's your advice for startups approaching IP and being as open as possible?
I'll reflect on what you said there, Omar, because it's much the same in Ireland. Folks have a great idea and they don't want to tell anybody in case somebody steals it. You're like, okay, so, I think it's an emotional disposition as much as it is a contractual disposition. So I would be of the position whereby without sharing, nothing materializes. So it's important as humans that we share and we have these relationships, but I'm also, in business. So from our perspective, we have a fairly detailed agreement with our customers. And when I say customers, with the startups that join our cohorts, and it talks to IP. And it talks to who owns what and who doesn't know what. And again, in this business, as you'll know, Omar, with your interest in startup and investing, you can't be disingenuous. If for a moment somebody thought that you were ultimately an IP smuggler or pirate, and you're out looking to kind of rob people's ideas, you're not going to last 30 seconds. Again, where you really kind of potentially mitigate the risks is when you're dealing with an entity sufficiently large as Cisco. We're not going to spoil our brand for pilferage, ultimately for minor pilferage. It's an obvious concern. We overtly suggest and indicate, we're happy to sign NDAs and we'll facilitate an NDA. But you don't really share secret sauce with us until you're speaking with an executive at Cisco. What we're talking about is CTO, one away from the board, business unit leader. So if you're speaking to somebody in the IoT business and you're talking about low latency, edge of network analytics, we're not going to invite everybody to that conversation. We invite the guy who owns that for Cisco. And with that comes an amount of executive credibility. And in no way, shape, or form with the people at that in those positions be, tantamount to pilferage or, looking at your idea.
No. We get to stops, that happen. We've got a question. I'm going to try to. So it says here, what are some of the challenges with cross-regional partnerships? So a lot of our audience is from the Middle East, North Africa. So I guess there could be one way of looking at it is, are you engaged? How do you work? Are you engaged with other regions? So the experience that you have from California to the UK, and how does these relationships work, and how do you build sort of trust in that scenario?
Fantastic, great question again. So my responsibilities are for EMEA, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and Russia. So quite clearly, MENA is of interest to us. And we don't find there to be any difficulty because, again, this would be about the most public event I think I've ever participated in from a Cisco perspective. I don't know how many people are at the back end on YouTube, but typically, as it says, it's by way of relationship with friends. So when we take an interest in a particular geo, we took an interest in what we would call EMEA, and we decided we were going to focus somewhere where there's quite a big ecosystem. So we said we'd start to London. It was never our intention to be London-centric. We just decided that we needed to start somewhere. So we started in London. We feel as though London is in really good shape at the moment. So now, hence we're in Paris. We were in Berlin a couple of weeks ago. We're beginning to, through introductions via friends, and I'll be very honest, it's via the European Business Angels Network and the current president, a lady called Candice Johnson. And we deliberately wanted to have a strategic relationship with Candice because we have access to our super angels. So representations from Abu Dhabi, representations from different North African communities or different North African countries, Morocco, Tunisia, XYZ. So when we gradually start to move away from the draw of the London ecosystem, I want to really find that one or two super cool deals that sit outside Berlin, outside Paris, outside London. And we really want to focus in on different regions. That's how we do it. And we never found it difficult. We found it really, really simple. And how we build trust, again, is we're coming with referenceability.
We just had a great question come in, and it was something I was going to ask you about next. So I am always in the MENA region, and so Sharif, who's the chairman of TechWadi, we have two questions. Sharif is the chairman of TechWadi. He was just in Cairo with us, and he came back and he said something. So if you're a Jay-Z fan, Jonathan, which I'm sure you are, and he said, Cairo has 99 problems, but engineers isn't one. Okay.
Yes.
The talent abundance in the MENA region is unreal. So
yes.
The first question here. So what are you looking for? So if we said to you, there is 3 startups in the MENA region that you're going to die for, what do these startups look like?
Okay.
So what are you dying for at the moment? Because I'm sure it's going to be out there somewhere, and we'll find it for you.
You will find it. You will find it. So cybersecurity, network security, anything around that is of interest. And one of the areas where you're going to see a huge amount of additional interest is in deep learning, AI, and machine learning. And where I would see that being most applicable is low latency edge analytics, edge of network analytics, and how to ultimately, in a massively complex environment, ascertain my fail point and continuously understand the data without having to send it to a central repository. Because, at the rate in which we are, I suppose, ingesting and determining data from, the plethora of streams. Imagine what it's like in a factory. If you're an industrial CEO in a very large factory, and we move into IOE, and we now have, I don't know, what's after terabytes, petabytes of data coming at us. I don't want to put that all into one warehouse and crunch it down. What I want to do is I want to know at that point in my network, at that sensor, what's the likelihood or what's the variance in performance. And then if I see a variance in performance on the edge, then let's stream all that data to the center. So it's northbound, southbound, eastbound, westbound kind of data analytics across a dispersed network, and predominantly in an industrial setting, and super cool. The other one where I would see a huge amount of interest is in cybersecurity, all things cyber, public web, dark web, all that kind of stuff.
Awesome. We're going to make our personal mission to find you 3 amazing startups from the Middle East. And somebody just asked, so what do you look for in a startup? So you touched on this earlier on. You said, someone with a bit of traction, they've got some validation, or it doesn't have to be kind of just something. What else do you look for in sort of the team? And a lot of people say, we can build a team around them. Is that something you do, or are you looking for a complete team that you're going to work with and mentor and bring up to scratch?
Well, again, with all due respect to your question, Omar, we're slightly further along We don't really do mentoring. I won't ever look at your pitch deck and tell you that it's not good. I assume it's your business. We will look at your product and we'll tell you, yes, what you told us is true, we believe in you. And what we'll do is we'll say, if we were to add this Cisco piece, is the addressable market bigger?
Fine.
And that's what we do. And what we also do, and Tom might have mentioned this earlier, is when we speak about ecosystem, it plays both ways. It's in and out. It's participate and take. One of the ways in which we offer value to the ecosystem is we won't necessarily invest in every company or in any company. And we may, and the big outcome for anybody listening, and if you're thinking, if I participate in the Cisco EIR program, what do I get? This is what I believe you get more often than not. Very rarely will we acquire you. Very rarely will we follow in on an investment. It's not a raise on debt. It's not our purpose in the world. More often than not, though, we'll have a strategic relationship with you, which I refer to as a bake-in strategy. If you could see me, I'm using my air quotes here, bake-in. What I mean by bake-in, some kind of a license agreement, an OEM agreement, or put you on a price list. So once upon a time, when you were selling, let's say, 1,000 solutions a year, if you have this relationship with us, we might sell 10,000. And what we can do is put an X. So that's ultimately, our differentiator. That's ultimately what's kind of interest. It should be of interest.
Awesome. So I've got another question here, which is interesting because I know you do a lot of work with sort of third-party investors or VCs. So when I'm looking to engage with corporates and vice versa, what are the benefits and what does that relationship look like, and how do each party benefit from it? Is it just purely a pipeline thing, deal flow, or
that's one of the things, and to round out my previous point, this relationship we have with the ecosystem is, if we love you and you have this baked-in strategy with us and we don't invest in you, we will go to our VC friends and say, oh, by the way, these guys are super cool. So without divulging, I'm actually in a very large Parisian VC's office at the moment, taking the call from here. And that's exactly what we're cultivating, those relationships. So if we arbitrarily find a super cool IOE Egyptian business and we totally believe in them, and it's not something, because it's not our purpose in the world to necessarily invest or acquire, but we really believe in you, we'll knock on the doors of our friends and say, oh, by the way, you need to meet this Egyptian group. Totally awesome, believe in them. Since we've worked with them in the last, let's say, 7, 8, 9 months, we've recognized, $9 million worth of potential pipeline. They're looking to do an A.
Awesome. And I think from a VC angle or an investor angle, if you can have a brand like Cisco EIR or whatever else it may be, say to you, we believe in these guys, we've worked with them, and as an investor, you'd want to get a hold of that deal and look at it a bit more. Awesome. Look, John, before we run out of time, and from a corporate angle, if you can kind of give sort of 4 or 5 tips for those corporates in the Middle East who have not yet started to engage with startups, how do they best approach that? So some of the really great things that you guys have done and been recognized for, like a single point of access, understanding the business unit. How would you wrap up 5 points for these corporates to start thinking about engagement with startups and make it successful?
Very interesting but slightly difficult question, and I'll try my very best. Decision-making power. That's the number one. So if you're going to advertise externally as a corporate and say, I want to be in the corporate venture business, make sure you can follow through on what it is you commit to. So if you're going to tell a startup, I'm going to, bring you into my company, we're going to, some way integrate you, and we're going to help you with an outcome, be honest to that. Make sure you can do it. It's quite upsetting when you sometimes see some companies, some young enthusiastic startups, they join some programs and it turns out it was a marketing exercise. There was nothing, and they're given $5,000 or $10,000 to start and a pat on the back and a little bit of PR. I think it's really important that you don't do that. I think once you have that disposition, or you have that power, that decision-making power, everything else is pretty much practical. It's slightly competitive, corporate venturing, as in, certainly from a technology perspective. I know SAP committed 2.5 billion to IOE. We've committed X to IOE, and you're going to see a whole bunch of people in the analytics business. So it's slightly competitive. Now, when I move that, they're frenemies. It's not, total competition. So what you need to be able to do is move with agility and move with speed. So once you start again with this premise of I'm going to deliver on what I said, and you put into the context or into the mix a marginal amount of competition, everything else is logical. Single point of contact. Yeah, being able to remunerate and pay people quickly for what it is they do, to be able to discharge expenses to your startups quickly. So if you have a true startup, when you ask them to get on an airplane from Egypt to come visit me in Paris, and then we're going to go from Paris to Norway, and the guy racks up 7 or 8K on a 2-week business journey, that's
a lot of money.
That's live or die money. So what you need to be able to do is make sure you can pay that down within 2 weeks. And little tiny things like that cascade agility and cascade fairness and the capacity to be able to execute quickly and through your program is the secret sauce.
How important do you think it is to hand these programs to executives that have been through the journey of a startup? Guys and ladies who have experienced starting a business and grown it successfully. Do you think that matters, or is it more lifetime experience? What's your look on that?
You might rephrase the question, Omar. I didn't quite catch it.
A lot of frustration. Startups sometimes go to corporates, and the head of innovation just doesn't get it. So, people like Nestor and a lot of people have said it's very important that when you're creating an innovation program, is to give it to somebody who's been through innovation, somebody who's been an entrepreneur. Do you think that's still relevant, or can anybody?
It's entirely relevant. Yeah, entirely.
Okay.
There's no point you and I, Omar, as people who enjoy this kind of business or this business, to go and try sell what it is we can or can't do to somebody who doesn't believe in us. It's like selling anything. If they don't want it, take the answer for what it is and move on. So if you're inside a company that doesn't believe in innovation, has no interest in innovation, and has no intention of giving you a budget to be innovative, go find a company that does. Don't get into a loveless relationship. You're wasting your time. That company will die. Move on. It's not going to be good for your career anyway. You've learned a very valuable lesson much earlier than your colleagues.
Awesome. We've got a couple of questions. One of them is, I guess it should be for you guys. Do you guys work on any government programs or initiatives that foster collaboration between startups and corporates? Do you know of any? Have you got any examples that you can share with the listeners?
Yes, I understand. In the UK, there's a number of initiatives that comes through a digitization, a country digitization agenda, CDA from Cisco, and we have Ideas London and Innovate UK, and they would be a kind of an agreement between the UK government and Cisco to foster and enable an innovation. So where they sit, and 2 wonderful programs, is they're a little earlier than what myself and Tom are. Myself and Tom won't help you build your product, we'll help you scale your product. The other 2, Ideas London and Innovation Gateway UK, will help you build it a little bit more than we will. So if you think it as almost like a pipeline or a continuum, they're left and we're right. We're kind of as you finish.
And I know for whoever's asked that question, I know that the mayor of San Francisco runs a very successful program, and I think Tom is actually one of the advisors on the program. It's called the STIR program, which looks at innovation challenges from a civic perspective. And they've recently started to bring in, obviously, they have corporate partners that help. And Jeremy Goldberg, who runs that program, again, it's a very successful program that's been expanded to, I think, 14 cities across the States now. and it looks at challenges that can help civic innovation, and I think the end goal is an implementation into the Mayor of San Francisco's city. So there's a lot of programs, a lot of initiatives that happen. And I think, even if we look from the MENA region, there's a lot of programs happening in Dubai around future, such as the Future 100 and the Future Accelerator program, where where government is getting involved with startups, collaboration, and we'll see how that goes over probably the next 6 to 12 months, and whether there's any success stories or not. Somebody here has asked, is there a particular stage when corporates are most interested in partnering with startups? I'm happy to answer this. I think a bit like what Jonathan said earlier on, you've got various corporates engage at various stage. I know from our personal experience, we have clients that engage with very early stage startups to help with mentoring and growth, etc. We have clients that were only interested at very later stage scale ups. So I think, you've got to find out exactly what the corporate position is and what their aim at the program, and that will determine whether you're at the right stage or not. Awesome. Jonathan, before we wrap up, for the startups listening, a bit similar to the other question, the top 5 tips from your end for startups approaching a corporate, and to go about that, sort of the do's and don'ts.
Much like I said at the very top of the call, value. Understand your value. Explain it very simply. Tell me in as many words as possible why you are relevant. And I don't mean why you as a human are relevant. We're all equally relevant. But why is this technology really relevant to Cisco customers? And what's the size of the opportunity? Super simple. Value.
Okay. And I guess now everybody wants to know, and I think, Tom, you've had a few successes, but can you tell us about, the one you're really proud of over the last 4 years, and how that started from joining Cisco and what's happened to that company by the end of the program? So the one that we're going to shout about and say, this is what makes Cisco the best EIR program around.
There's been many, don't tend to really, which one of your children do you love the most? Yeah, it's a difficult question.
I have one, so I love him.
Yeah, I think what I use, and believe it or not, it's potentially contradictory. It's the fact that some of our peers are acquiring our alumni. For me, that's a huge indication of the credibility that we brought to the situation. Again, it's a bittersweet thing. Should we have acquired them? Should we have But when we see, and it sounds counterintuitive, but when we see companies like Nirvana being acquired by Intel for $400 million, and Nirvana are kind of grads, we've worked with them, that kind of indicates to us that we're doing the right thing, as in we have the correct kind of problems being addressed. We're working with the correct kind of people to help us solve those problems, to the point where Intel panicked, well, not panicked, but gave 400 million. You know what I mean? So that gave us a lot of credibility, and it was a lot of money also. So I think when we see things like that happening, what is it you do? The way startups is, for every success there's a failure. For every good day you have, you've had 2 bad days. That could have been a bad day for us if you read it the wrong way. I read it the other way and saw it as, a positive thing. And the other one, I suppose, is when I really kind of knuckle down on it, it's the latent opportunity we have with some of our current cohort. Some of our current cohort, I won't name them, but of 3, all 3 are in the position probably to recognize at least on average $7 or $8 million additional pipeline that they didn't have 6 months ago, and that's a very conservative figure.
And I think that's it gives you an idea of the Cisco approach. A lot of people would have shouted about something, but I think the fact that you're happy about the pipeline that these companies have opened, and it just shows that it's an example of a true collaboration between a startup and a corporate. Now, there's two ways you could take this question. You can give us the diplomatic answer, or you can, I don't know. But are there any plans to see the EIR program expanded to MENA? If so,
it's open in MENA.
It's open, right? How do these guys, go about approaching? What is your ecosystem partnership like, and what's the best way to get something in front of you?
The best way to get something in front of us is there's two ways. Is approach us through your own market. So have you bubbled up through your own market unit? So let's arbitrarily pick a country, let's pick Morocco. Have you bubbled up, and are you in some way better than your competitors? And if it puts you into a ranking, if you go from, let's say there's a 100 enterprise grade startups in Morocco, and you're now in the top 20, that alone is a reason why you should be reaching out to us. If you get into that position and you have somebody who has an international lens or a network, you should be looking to those people to help, enhance your capacity to internationalize. The other one is you can always get us on our website, and or if you genuinely feel as though there's a reason why we should be having a conversation, I'll put my money where my mouth is. It's jonacost@cisco.com. That's it. Get in contact with us.
There you go. Not many people will give out the email like that, so well done. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure. Nida, have you got any questions or wrap-ups for us?
Yeah, thank you for facilitating, Omar, and asking all of the questions we came in. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us. I know Tom had to drop, but please do thank him as well. This was a great webinar. We had lots of positive feedback come in on Twitter, and just some of our members messaging us directly about how much they enjoyed the webinar. So thank you both very much. I don't want to take up any more of your time. But we'll be in touch.
A pleasure.
Go
well.
All right.
Safe journey. Speak to you soon.
See you soon. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.